All right. Hello, everyone. I'm not even sure if there is anyone. So I'm just going to say hello to the people watching this as a recording. So here's the plan for today. Let me share my screen. I have no idea if this is readable. I'll try and increase the font size a bit. How does this work? Isn't it color scheme? And then, yeah. There we go. This may or may not be better. Anyways, so here's the plan for today. I'm still working on Arcanist, my new package that allows you to deal with multi-step forms in your application, and things are going along pretty well. But as I've been writing more features and as I've been writing more and more tests, my test suite has sort of started talking to me. Let me show you what I mean. So Arcanist has quite a few tests. This is the test file for the wizard class itself, right? So these are all the tests in here. It's fairly thorough. I am pretty confident in this test suite, but let me just close this. I need all the resources I can get. All right, so one thing I've noticed as I've been writing these tests, and I think this is an important skill to learn that's often overlooked, is being able to pick up on the fact, like when your tests are telling you something about your design. So what I mean is, let's say I have all these tests here, and they look fairly straightforward, right? This doesn't look like a very difficult test. But the problem is that most of the complexity is hidden behind these test helpers. And if you go in here, there's a bunch of stuff being created here. And what's even worse is if I want to test, set up a specific scenario, let's say, what's a good one? Sure, let's take this one. Rejects an invalid form request. It's not really that clear if you just read this test, what the situation is. Like, what situation am I trying to simulate here? Like, why is this invalid? Like, where is this defined, right? Oops. Why should this request return an invalid response? And the thing is, like, if I scroll all the way down to the bottom, I have, all the way down here, I have all these test classes that are actual classes that extend from the correct base class, and they're configured correctly, like just like what you would do if you were to actually use this package. So they have actual steps, which are defined down here, and then you have to look inside the steps, and like it returns some view data. There's something weird going on in here, so it's like all very confusing to even really understand which of these things are actually relevant to a given test and how all of these different parts fit together to then like create the situation I'm trying to simulate in my test. It gets really difficult to understand what the scenarios I'm setting up, right? So let me give you a good example. When I did dependent fields yesterday, I think, I decided to extract it out into a separate test case. So there is a dependent fields test case, which is basically just a wizard test case. I just decided to split split it out. But the problem is, to set up a test scenario, I have to configure a wizard and the steps of a wizard in such a way that there are certain dependencies between these fields, so that if I try and like change one of these fields, some other field gets invalidated, right? Like I have to set up this dependency chain between these different components. And the problem is, the only way I can set this up is to actually create all of these classes, which means like there's this create wizard repository up here for like this dependent step wizard. There's a bunch of random fields that you're not quite sure what they even mean and how they're connected. But somehow if I then update this field, I guess, this one should have changed. And it's really difficult to like understand why this should be like, why this should be true. So you'd have to go down into this like test class that I've defined and see, okay, it has 2 steps, right? So let's look at these steps. Okay, so it has like some fields defined, and then what was the other step? It had a step with dependent field. Okay, and so it has a dependency on this field which was defined up. Like it's really difficult to to understand what's going on. And that's kind of the code smell that I've been noticing as I've been writing more and more tests. The test setup gets very complicated, and it's very difficult to understand what I'm actually setting up. And usually when that happens, it is a sign that the class you're testing is doing too much. It has too many responsibilities because you're unable to like isolate some parts of the behavior in a test and say, let's just assume that this thing behaves like this. In that case, I want my class that I'm actually testing to do this. Like, right? I don't care why this other thing behaves like that. That's a separate test. I'm just saying, like, if it does, here's how my class is supposed to respond. And I'm not able to make that cut, right? I can't isolate this behavior because the wizard has all of these responsibilities itself. So the only way to test anything is to basically set up the entire world. And that's kind of what I want to think about a little bit, how to tackle that. So specifically, the first thing I have identified that is really has quite the smell is this line right here. So the wizard, the abstract wizard, which is the class you're supposed to extend from when creating your own wizards, it has a dependency on a wizard repository, and that immediately is weird to me, because it means that the wizard loads itself, right? Like, shouldn't this be one level higher? And that's the thing that's supposed to return the wizard, right? And if you look at how I use this, the first step in any of those endpoints. So let's take for example, the update method. The first line is always this load ID, which to me, like, now that I look at it, this is immediately strange. This is immediately suspicious to me. And so what this function does is, first of all, it sets its own ID to whatever the ID of the URL is. Again, I hate this. And then secondly, it tries to load itself, right? It passes itself to the repository as a dependence, as a parameter. And this is supposed to spit out like an array of data that has been that has already been saved for this particular wizard. So for example, in the previous step. And then it assigns it to like its own data property. Like, it's everything is so stateful, right? The wizard in the beginning, when you instantiate the class, is basically in an invalid state. It has no data, it has no ID. And then it tries to load itself. Like, this is strange to me. This might sound like very theoretical, but the concrete problem that I have in my test is because I have a dependency on this wizard repository, and because the first thing the wizard always does is it tries to load itself, that means in every single test case, I have to ensure that if I make a request to a route that assumes an existing wizard, right? So like this is the wizard ID. I want to show this step for the wizard with this ID. That means I have to ensure that such a wizard actually exists, right? So when the wizard calls like wizard repository load, that thing actually returns something, because otherwise the wizard would return like an exception that no wizard exists for this ID. This is completely, it has nothing to do with the test itself, right? The fact that it can be deleted really is completely independent from loading a wizard from the database or whatever. But I always have to when I create a wizard, I have to ensure that the wizard repository it gets passed is like seeded with some data for this wizard. It's so strange, right? There's so much unnecessary setup required just because I have that dependency in there. So this is kind of my first, the first thing I will try and tackle. The thing is, like, any of these refactorings will be really quite invasive changes, right? They will affect a lot of things. So this is going to be a tough one, but I'm going to do my best to actually try and refactor this, right? So that means the thing from the outside, its behavior doesn't change. Which, I mean, I'm changing its constructor, so of course it changes, but like I don't want to refactor for 2 hours and the whole thing is broken the entire time, right? I'll try to move from like working state to working state. Alrighty. Let me just check something over here really quickly. Stand by. Right, okay. So, how do we start with this? So ideally, what I would be able to do, what I'd like to be able to do as a first step is that in my tests, instead of having to set up like the repository to have like a valid wizard, I just want to be able to like pass the data to the wizard directly, like instantiate the wizard with the data that currently is being loaded from the repository, because they have this idea that all of these dependencies really shouldn't be in here, they should be one level higher. Right, so instead of the wizard, because the wizard is currently acting as a controller, but I feel like I need to change that and actually have a dedicated controller which has all of these dependencies. And then it kind of delegates to these methods of the wizard. So the wizard will no longer handle like redirecting and loading itself and saving itself and like resolving its action. That will all happen one level higher, which would then free up the constructor of the wizard to do like dependency injection in user land, right? Because currently you can't do that because the constructor's already taken. So as a first step towards my desired goal, I guess, is this is going to stay in here for now, but I'm going to add, I think, another dependency for now. So I could pass in the data directly, and then I'm going to change like this implementation slowly to, instead of trying to load itself, it will just use the data that I pass it, and then I'll slowly like move my tests over to, instead of seeding the repository with the data, I'll just pass the data in. And then hopefully, once I've done all of that, I'm one step closer to removing this dependency. So let's see if this works. So the first thing I'll want to do is I'll just say I'll just accept a data array and I immediately assign it, right? So instead of this having like a default value, we instead assign it here. I'm not even sure this is protected. I think this should be private. So that shouldn't really have broken anything. Unfortunately, running tests while streaming is incredibly slow. But I'll try and just run the wizard tests, I guess. Right, so this didn't change anything. But now, what I want to do is, in my tests, let's look at a test that actually requires some data. Readiness the first step in a wizard. So this one doesn't even really need a repository. Right? Because when you call the create method, that is like you're trying to show the template for the first step in the wizard. So there's no loading happening at all because you know the wizard doesn't exist here. So this isn't even necessary. But this also doesn't need any data, so there's really nothing I need to change here. I want to change a step that actually like depends on the data that's in the repository, and then move that over to like just using the data that's passed in the constructor. First exception, does the step exists? No. Gets the view data from the step. No, that's also boring. I'm looking for a test, this one. So this actually creates a wizard, like creates data in the wizard repository for the wizard I'm about to test. Because I want to check that if I submit it again, it actually updates that data. Right, so it starts out as old first name, old last name, and then it should be a new first name. Right, because I'm passing that as part of the request payload. So instead of doing that, let's actually make this create wizard method even worse than it already is, and do like array data, and then we'll pass in data. So so right now, since that isn't even being used, I think we can just rerun the test. That shouldn't have broken anything. And then inside my update method. So how do I move this over? I guess if the data isn't actually, if my data array isn't empty, it means I've provided some initial data through the constructor. Right, so that's kind of how I can slowly refactor away from always delegating to the repository without breaking everything in the process. So I think I can get this test to still pass by just doing like if not empty this data. So this entire thing should be removed at some point, but I'm trying to like slowly migrate away from this without breaking everything in the process. So this is kind of assuming that if the wizard already has some data before it has called like this load, it means I've provided some initial data through the constructor. Right, so that's kind of my way of slowly but steadily move to this and delete this. So let's see. That should have actually, nothing should have changed. Everything should still pass because this is currently the only test we've made that. Okay, as I say that, it fails. Okay. Oh, I know why it fails. Because load actually does more than just load its data. It also sets the ID. Well, I guess what we could do is, yeah, this is even worse. Because not only does it load the data, that's also how it kind of checks if a wizard even exists for this ID. Because the repository will throw an exception in that case. Oh wow, this is even worse than I thought. Right, so everything is so connected, which is what's making these tests so difficult. But I think I can just ignore this for now because that's not the test I'm trying to write. So let's just say, let's move this in here instead. So if my data is empty, only then will I try to load it. Right. So my one of my favorite quotes from there's a very good book I recommend, which is called I think refactoring legacy code or something like that. Dealing with, I have it somewhere. Let me see if I can spot it in my bookshelf. Yeah. It is Dealing Efficiently with Legacy Code, a really good book. And it has a cool quote in it, which is, when you refactor, you might have to suspend your, what was I really like the phrasing of that. Let me actually look up the quote really quickly. Like you have to suspend your sense of aesthetics for a bit, right? Like things will get worse before they get better. Like this is horrible, but I'm fine with this because I know that that is not what I'm actually going for. This is just like one step to get me close to what I actually want to do. But doing it this way ensures that I actually don't break everything at once. So, have I rerun this again? I think this should still work. Right. No, it doesn't. Okay, let's see. Stop on failure. Yeah, this is what I wanted to avoid. Like some completely unrelated test is now failing. That's kind of what I'm trying to avoid. So it fires an event after a wizard was loaded. Huh. Wait, what? The wizard was loaded. This one. Why is this one failing? Which, the update case is failing, so this one. I don't see why this should be failing. Which is another good reason I really need to refactor this, right? Like things are connected in ways that are not obvious, which is a really big problem. This is how technical debt happens. So, why is this failing? First of all, why is this all lowercase? update case is failing. Oh, I was supposed to remove this. Okay, yeah, that looks better. Cool. So that means my this kind of handles form submit for an existing wizard. That's the one, right? No, what was the one that just changed? Oh, because yeah, of course it still passes because I haven't actually changed anything about this test. So what I want to do is, instead of doing this, where I pass in a repository with some seeded data, I want to just pass in the data that I want the wizard to have. And I actually think this is going to be tricky. Because I'm using the repository in my assertion. Which means if I don't use the repository, it will actually not. Oh, I think these two things are unrelated, actually. Let's see. Because I'm using the repository to read data, to load data. Oh man, this is going to be even tougher than I expected. So what's going on? Is there some way I can change the assertion? Because I want to move away from having the repository inside this class at all, right? So what's some other way that I could assert that the data actually was changed? Because I think ultimately what I want is, instead of the wizard itself doing like all the controllery things like redirecting and I guess like loading itself and stuff like that, I wanted to just like return a result and then have an actual controller one level higher that sort of interprets this result and then does everything the wizard is currently doing. So the wizard basically just like makes sure like the correct step gets called and knows how to interpret like the result of the step, but it's not doing all the controllery things. So ideally, this assertion, like this method, would just return something that I can assert against. Right, like maybe update gives me back the new wizard data that should be persisted. But I currently don't have that, so let's continue with this theme of making things worse before they get better. And we're actually going to... I was about to make the data field public, but that assertion doesn't really do what the test is trying to test. Because a test currently what I want to test is that the thing actually got updated, not just locally, like in memory, but it got persisted. The change got persisted. So why do I need the wizard to even have existing data? Because this could have easily just been this is the first time I'm actually submitting this step, right? I'm kind of conflating updating with submitting it for the first time. At least that's what the test name suggests. Handles a form submission for a step. So this test doesn't even need any existing data, it feels like. This could have just as well been just that. Right, because that would still prove that this actually does something. I feel like that's the same test, but simpler. So is there an actual... is there an actual test where I do like a before and after? It's not even, I feel like these tests, the problem with them isn't that they depend on existing data, it's that they depend on the wizard is loading itself by NID. And like the contract of the wizard repository is that if you try and load a wizard with an ID that doesn't exist, it throws an exception. So I need to ensure that the repository like has that wizard. Which again is a thing that I would like to just move one level up. Like this should just fail and be turned into like an HTTP not found response before we even get to the wizard. It's really difficult to get started with this feature, like with this refactoring, because any change I make has like pretty big implications. Yeah, I feel like none of this is actually testing that I'm updating anything. The repository is like completely separate to all of these tests. Yeah, none of these tests have anything to do with the repository, with anything that the repository does, except the whole thing with, like, if a wizard doesn't exist, it'll turn it into an HTTP not found response, which is something that I want to move up anyways. So maybe I should just start with that upper layer and then see how I can move these things out of the wizard. Because I feel like the wizard is going to change quite a bit. So I'm using this for loading the wizard, saving the step data. So that's basically persisting whatever the user submitted for the current step. Again, that's something that doesn't have to happen in here. This could just be the return value of the update method, right? And then the outer layer, the controller, would then save it. So I think this might be a better approach than trying to like muck around in this class. Because every change I make is going to be pretty invasive. Yeah, I think that's the better approach. So to sum up, I would like to move all of the responsibility of like loading the wizard given some request, right? So the URL is like /wizard_id/slug. Currently the wizard does that itself, which brings a whole bunch of problems with it. And makes testing very difficult. And instead I would like this to happen one layer above by some controller that doesn't exist yet. And then I would just instantiate this wizard with like the correct data and ideally also the step. Like that's the next thing that I don't like. And then also all the responsibility of like redirecting and, well, yeah, I guess redirecting, but there's like redirect with error and just a normal redirect. I'd like to move that out of the wizard as well. Because again, this kind of makes all the tests very difficult because there are just so many responsibilities and so many dependencies that this class has. If I can move this out and test like just the controller behavior separately, I think it will massively simplify all the wizard tests. Because right now they're quite problematic. So currently what I do is when I register a wizard, I register the wizard class as its own controller basically, which has the nice benefit that I always know what wizard class I'm dealing with. So if I now move this out into like a level above, it means the first thing I need to figure out is, given this route or this slug, like what's the class that is even relevant here? So basically, instead of doing this, where I like loop over all the wizards and register all the routes, there would be just like one set of routes. And then there's one controller that handles like routing it to the correct wizard. Yeah, I think this is the better way to go. Instead of all this crap. I just really dislike how stateful everything is right now. Because the wizard basically starts out in an invalid state when it gets constructed because it doesn't have an ID, it doesn't have data loaded. And then the first thing it does is it tries to like load itself, which is always really weird to me because in my opinion, you shouldn't be able to create an object in an invalid state. That's kind of the entire point of a constructor, right? You pass it everything it needs, and then it should be valid. And currently, that's not the case. Okay, so let's try writing this weird controller thing. Oh boy. So let's see. I have changed my streaming resolution today. I'd be interested to know if the text is still as like pixelated as it was the last few times. So yeah, if you could let me know that would be great. Right, so what I want to do, there should be some like wizard controller test, right? Because basically what I'm going to write is a controller. Possibly some middleware, I don't know yet. So, where should I start? Because now, why I think this is a good idea is I can now test like just the general controller behavior once without having to ensure that the wizard actually behaves this way, right? I can just, because I can like inject some mock, right, that just does what I want when I test the controller, I can just say, like, assuming the wizard returns like this failure response, here's what the response should be. Currently, I would actually have to set up everything so that it actually produces this result. I can't mock it, which is my entire problem. So let's say, what's my first test? What's an easy test? I guess I can just steal some of the tests that are currently wizard tests, right? So one of the wizard tests, for example, is I think it shows the view gets the view data. No, that's not it. Renders the view. Yeah, renders the first step in the wizard. That's an easy one, right? Except that it isn't. Oh my god, this is never going to end. Because now I need to figure out what the first step is. Right, currently that is just like an internal state of the wizard, but now if I move it out and someone else needs to make the decision of rendering that thing, but I guess I can split the dependency, like the controller doesn't have to know what the first step is, the wizard, it can ask the wizard, right? And the wizard gives it back like, this is the step you're supposed to render. Oh my god. So let's just write the same test. It renders the first step of a wizard. So that is basically, that's the control, the create route, right? That would be this one. You just call the wizard without any ID or without any step. Okay, so now the nice thing is that we have made a cut. We've created an additional layer. We can now mock like the other layer. We can just say, I don't care how the wizard determines what the first step is. It just gives me the first step, right? And then I render it. So I guess the assertion would actually be the same as it is here. I already have this like fake response render that I use for testing, so I can do stuff like step was rendered. And I think that's going to be the same assertion. It's just that the things in the middle are going to be different. So this is still, but now instead of saying step was rendered, test step, because that's one of the things I want to get away from, is having to define all these stupid test classes. Let's just leave it like this for now. So I guess I could actually write this as an HTTP test, right? Because this is a controller, so I could use Laravels like this get to like really make sure, yes, the HTTP side of things works. Which means I need routes, right? So there are two ways I could do this. I could actually like register, extend this class so that it registers these routes. Yeah, I think that's the easiest way actually. Because then I can just do a full-on end-to-end test. Like, it's not really end-to-end, but it's a controller. I want to test it at that level. So I want to be able to say like this, get, and then, I don't know, wizard. What's the, it is, shit, that's configurable. So maybe I'll use the route name instead. let's do get route wizard, and then I need some, I don't know, wizard slug create. If I call that, do I even need the step renderer here? Like, do I need to mock it, or can I just like say assert view is or something like that? Okay, let's first get a test to actually run before we start changing things. So for now, I want to do this. Now, I need to make sure that wizard slug needs to map to something, right? Because that's how we're going to resolve the actual wizard class that will be instantiated. And then I guess the next question is like, where the fuck does test step come from? Right? Like, why is this the step that's rendered? And this is where we can actually like mock the wizard that gets returned from this. And we'll just say like, when you ask this wizard, like, give me your first step, it's just going to return this. So that's kind of my act phase, right? And now what are the things I need to set up? I need to ensure that how do I want this to work? Because I think this isn't actually all that difficult, because every wizard already, the abstract wizard class has a static property string. So basically it's just like looping over all the registered wizards and like grabbing the first one whose slug matches whatever's in the URL. Now the question is, where do I get the registered wizards from? Currently they get registered in the config file. So here, this is where you as a user would like register all the wizards you've written, so that they then get like picked up here, right? This is where I use that. No, that's not what I want. Okay, it's in the service provider is where I grab the config key. So I could just grab it from the config, or I can say that this is a constructor parameter of this controller, which I think is nicer because it makes the test easier. But for now, let's just do this for now. Let's just do Arcanist. I'm kind of falling into the trap of trying to refactor something I haven't yet written, right? Which is why, like, just get a test to run, make sure it does what it's supposed to do, and then you have like a framework within you can refactor and check that, yes, I haven't actually broken anything. So I'm just gonna seed these wizards with some wizard whose slug is that. Right, so I guess what I have to do is okay, before I can mock this, I still have to do this, like test wizard. Because it needs to have a public static string slug, which matches this one, right? So it's wizard slug. That's the kind of thing I want to get away from, right? That you like have to know that this thing happens to match like this property of this test class that's defined somewhere. I'd like the test to be more self-contained, but currently I can't do that, so I'm doing this as a first step. And so I kind of want to register that, right? And then to get like what its first step is, I'm just gonna make up a method that doesn't exist yet. So it's just a, I don't know, first step, get first step. I'm actually not sure. I think the renderer expects an actual, expects an actual instance of the step. So I can't just return like the string. I need to like instantiate it, which again makes things more complicated than I want them to be. So what is the wizard currently doing? This render step grabs the first one, but these are already instantiated because in the constructor I'm looping over them and instantiate them. So these are already instances. And then whenever I say render step, yeah, it needs the step, the wizard, and the view data. The view data. Huh. Ah, fuck. But I think this can be, no, I think this is fine if I just make this public and it just accepts like any step. So the behavior can actually say the exact same. It just needs to be public so that the controller can use it. So it basically asks for now, it asks the step for its, sorry, the wizard for its first step, and then it tells it, okay, and now give me the view data for the step. I think this might work. Ah, man, this is a really difficult refactor. Okay, so let's just forget the implementation for a second. What's the test going to be like? I call this route, right? And then I assert that some view was rendered. Now, my fake renderer, does it actually, can I assert that I passed along some data? Yes, I can. Thank you, Pascal, for thinking ahead. Okay, so I can actually assert that. It got rendered with some view data, which we don't care. What it is, it's just the thing that the wizard is supposed to return. Right, so the question is like, where does the renderer even come from, right? This is going to be a dependency, construct a dependency of this controller class, which means if I test it like this, it's going to be auto-wired, which means I have to set up the container correctly. Let's do that. This is not a good example of TDD, by the way, because I still haven't actually written a test and I'm already thinking too much about the implementation, but sort of the curse of knowledge, right? I know what I currently have and I know what I need to refactor away from. The reason I don't want to, why I still want to mock the renderer, instead of just saying like, why not just say, I don't know, there's some like view is, view has, right? Um, oh, wait. No. No, because so that the response I don't really know what the view is going to be because response render is an interface. So there is no one right solution to this. I can't say a certain view is because this could be anything, right? I can't assume that it's going to be like wizard dot blah 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 dot create because a different implementation of the same interface could have a different convention for how it looks up the view path, right? That's intentional. That's a feature, not a bug. So I can't actually assert against like what I expect the view to be, but I feel like this is an important detail. I don't want you to render any view. It's supposed to be like specifically the view for this one. That's why I kind of still need my abstraction here. So, right. Okay, so how I would normally write this, if I hadn't already implemented this once, would be to say, okay, this is my assertion. This should be true if I call this route, right? That's my act phase. And now the reason this is supposed to be true is because the wizard that maps to wizard slug, its first step is this. And the view data for the step is this, right? So now I want to like set up the behavior of this wizard without ever worrying about how this slug actually maps to this wizard. That's kind of an implementation detail. I just want to establish that there is a wizard for that slug, which I have down here, right? Let's just use this. And then we'll just hardcode everything for now. The first step is just going to be an instance of test step. I don't care. Like let's just get this to run. And this needs, oh my God, a step needs the wizard, which now means this has to extend from abstract wizard. Right, and some index, I believe. Yeah. So this just gives me back a wizard step for now. And then, like, view data, which is how I get this thing. So first step, this method that currently doesn't exist on the abstract wizard class, is how I get this part of the assertion. And now the second part of the assertion I get from this view data method, which is currently I think it's protected. Sorry, the build view data or something, right? Yeah, build view data. So build view data. And that one takes the request and the step as arguments. Okay, so the request and the step as arguments, and since we don't care how this works, we'll just hardcode the thing that we are setting against. So the idea or the assumption is that the only way you can get this specific value, other than hardcoding it, right, is to call this method on this collaborative setup, right? That's kind of how these two things relate. But I'm not forcing the implementation to be tied to this, right? If there's some other way that you manage to get the correct value, great, right? The test should still pass. The test is not testing that you're calling this specific method. It's just that whatever you render has the correct data. This is just like one way I've set up for you to get this data. But I don't want to like tie the test too much to the implementation. So I have set this thing up. Now I need to make sure that it is actually registered. So it's Arcanist wizards. Is this one, right? And then I need to make sure that this renderer that I'm kind of like mention here, let's just for now do response renderer. Oops, app instance. So we'll just like hard code it into the container. Whenever someone tries to resolve this thing, it'll get back my fake response renderer. Okay, let's see. Assuming there is a test wizard with this slug, whose first step is going to be this, and whose view data is going to be this for this particular step. If I call this route for the slug of this wizard, I expect that this step with this data was rendered. That seems like it makes sense to me. Okay, let's see. Let's filter just on this test. Okay, yeah, everything's gonna break, of course, because yeah, that's I've already have a test wizard class in some other test. Controller test wizard. I want to get rid of this thing anyways, so I don't care what it's called. Controller test wizard. Let's see. Right. Route is not defined. Okay, let's fix one step at one error at a time. Starting with this one. A route doesn't exist, so let's give it that route. I'll just put it in here for now. This is a get route. I don't even know what it means. Don't care for now. It just needs to have this name. Not create. Wizard slug create. Sure. It doesn't even have a controller yet. So let's just do this. It's going to get better eventually. Right, so view did not get rendered. Okay, so just to get the test to pass, we can further hardcode our assertion and say, so we need a response renderer, right? And then we'll just say, for now, gonna be really ugly. Render step. I think, yeah, I'm just gonna hardcode this for now. I don't care. So the wizard is what is this? This is controller test wizard, right? Yeah, look at this. This is prime programming right here. And then we have test step, right? Don't care. Render for this step for this wizard with some hard-coded view data. I just want to get the test to pass. I'm not even sure if this will pass. Holy shit, it does. I did not expect that to pass. Okay, now we can slowly refactor towards what we actually want. So I think the first thing I want to do is just create a wizard controller. move this into here. Whoops. Move this into here. And then I need this response renderer. So private renderer, and then we'll do this. This renderer, render step. With all the hard-coded nonsense still in there. And then let's change this from being just a closure to actually using this controller. Which hopefully... No, it doesn't work. What did I do wrong? Invalid route action. Oh yeah, because I need to actually tell him that it is this method. Okay, so that worked. Now, there's obviously a whole bunch of duplication in here and hard-coded things, right? So we could just say like wizard. To get rid of the hard-coded view data, we can just say wizard build view data, which currently, let's see, for this request and this step. Does that work? It does. Okay, and now instead of instantiating the step ourselves, we just ask the wizard, yo, what's your first step? Okay, cool. And then instead of hard-coding the wizard, we need to now make sure that we resolve the correct one. This one I actually don't want to change it because I want to write another test for that first. Now I want to actually think about what I could change so that I don't have to create these stupid test classes every single time. So this is maybe like another thing for where I'm missing some dependency. Where it's like I give it a slug and it returns the correct wizard. Because then in my test I could just say, yo, wizard resolver or whatever, you just return this thing. And then I don't have to do these stupid things anymore. Because I'm not actually grabbing them from the config. I have now something I can make do what I want it to do. So let's try that. Maybe I can change this. Instead of doing that, what if there was some like wizard resolver? I don't know. Maybe this is going to be the repository. I don't know. Right, which is something of class wizard resolver. I don't know. Doesn't exist yet. Don't care. That if I call it, it allows like, I don't know, resolve by slug maybe? Is there any other thing you could resolve by? No, it's just resolve. It allows resolve with the particular slug and returns. Now what does it return? If I want to get rid of this, I don't like the idea of like a mock returning a mock. So maybe instead of this thing. So wait, what's stopping me from configuring like some wizard mock and just like register that here and just like get class of the mock. Because I would have to mock quite a few things. I need to mock this thing and this thing. I don't think this is going to help me much. Okay, so let's do some more TDD, because this is obviously still wrong, but I don't really have a reason to change it, because all my tests are passing. So I want to say, like, what does it do if you try and open a route for some slug that doesn't have a wizard? There's no wizard with that slug, right? Because that would force me to actually do something different here. I think I already have an exception for that. Like a wizard not found exception. Although I think that actually gets turned into like an HTTP not found somewhere in here. Oh yeah, I should maybe undo this crap. Yeah. Which this whole thing is supposed to go anyways. Let's just... It was a valiant attempt, but it didn't really work out. Hello, yes, hi. So Arcanist is a package I am working on currently for Laravel to help you write like multi-step form wizards. And it does like things like it persists like state between steps. So you can, if you accidentally close your browser and reopen it, everything's still there, and it handles like navigating back and forth and like request validation, dependencies between fields, like all that sort of stuff. It's kind of difficult to, I don't have an example to show you right now. So it's kind of difficult to give you the full pitch. But basically, yeah, it's a package to help you build form wizards. Because I have found that to be incredibly tedious. So I just wanted to solve it once and for all. And this is currently like just a big old internal refactoring of the package, which is going to be difficult to understand if you only just tuned in. So... Okay, so, but I guess like the HTTP not found exception is the most semantic exception, right? So I could just say this get, and then that should be a 404. I don't even have to care about the specific exception. So it renders a not found response. If no wizard exists for the slug. It's going to be... Let me try and see if I can highlight this. It's going to be headless. It already is headless. Headless in the sense that it doesn't come with any templates, because like there's no sensible template that I could provide because it's going to be so specific to your application, right? Just the UX, the look of it, everything. Um, and it's not even tied to either blade or inertia. There's this. That's the whole idea behind this interface, right? The reason there is a response renderer um, interface is because I wanted to not have it only work for blade or only work for inertia. So the package will ship with with a blade response renderer, right? Which just like by convention will try and like map the wizard and the step to some view path, right? So it's going to be like resources, views, and then wizard dot wizard slug dot step slug dot blade dot php, something like that, right? And at work, I actually have a inertia-based implementation, so I know for a fact that this will work with inertia. But I don't want to include the inertia one in the base package because I don't want to have a dependency on inertia in the core package. This will be like a separate thing that you can install, the inertia response renderer. But this will be like a first party implementation. So basically, the whole idea behind this is that I will try and pass as much information to the view as possible so that you can that you have all the information to build whatever you want without me having to assume anything, right? So, for example, every template that Arcanist is going to render will have this information. It's like everything about the current wizard, its ID, its slug, its title, all of its steps, and for each step, it will show if the step is complete or not, right? So you can, in your view, you can render like a green check mark or something. It'll tell you if the step is the current step, right? So you can highlight it, what the URL for it is, so you can like make these things clickable, right? All of these things, so that you can hopefully build whatever you need, and I don't have to assume like anything. That's the idea behind it. So I can actually just show you the demo application that I'm working on because I think I need to take a quick break from this anyways. Let me just check really quickly if everything but this controller thing still works. Because my demo application actually uses like this is a symlink, right? Whatever I do here will affect my demo application. It's not actually installed via Composer. Or I guess it is, but it's like a local path that just gets symlinked. Okay, so yeah, that looks good. Let me just Arcanist demo serve that. Let me open it up in PHP Storm as well. I'm on a different screen right now. Stand by. This one. Hello, PHP Storm. This one. Yes, this one. Trust me. Yes. What is going on? Cancel this. Don't ask again. What is going on? Please. Please. Ah, yes. I love it when this happens. Okay, so again, apparently full screen was the problem. Right, let me show you in the browser. No. So validation is actually something I can let me just show you. This is easier than trying to explain it abstractly. I'm going to open this in a browser. 1 second. Okay. So, oh no, it's still there. It's just it was just hiding. I can't get this to close. Okay, I'm just going to ignore it. Wait, no, not everything. Just this tab. Right, so this is kind of my demo applicant that I've been using. So none of this UI stuff is actually part of the package, right? The way the implementation would look for this is I have a registration. Where is it? Oh, it's indexing. That's why the autocompletion doesn't work. There's it's a sign up wizard. So this is what the wizard class itself will look like. It basically just declares this is the title, which maps to this. The slug, which maps to this up here. And then it has a bunch of steps. And the order of these steps is actually relevant, right? Because if you do a for each in your template, if you change the order, you can reorder your steps. And each step, so let's take the first step, for example. This is the pick username. Enter username. So each step defines a couple of things. One is it defines its fields, but this looks like similar to what Nova does if you've used that. That's where I got the whole idea from. But this doesn't actually generate any markup, right? This is just configuration. The way this kind of works is by saying, okay, there is a field called username, and it has validation rules. It's required. Arcanist will use that in the background to if I just submit, right? There's a normal validation error that works exactly like it does in Laravel. You still have to handle this in your template, right? So if I go to the template of that step, so resources, views, wizards, that would be username. I just created a bunch of blade components that do all the boilerplate around it. So the step list up here, right, is part of this wizard component, and every step just needs to provide basically its form, right? But I still have to handle this validation error in here. But that's how kind of these things fit together. So just if I were to remove this validation rule, it would just let me submit an empty username, right? This is taken care of inside the package. You just specify the rule, and then it'll apply the normal Laravel controller validation stuff. So another thing is view data. So every step kind of can define custom data that gets passed to the template, in addition to all the stuff that Arcanist passes to every template, right? If we just in our template, if we just dump what I think there's a data key. I think that's what I call it. If I dump this here, I think it's wizard, yeah. So data is what I provide, right? Data is whatever I specify inside here. But there's also going to be a wizard key that's always going to be present. And that's kind of all the context information that Arcanist gives you. So it's okay, this is the ID of the wizard, right? This is its slug. This is the title. Here are its steps. And then the first step, for example, it's active, right? I just get that information. I don't have to like look at the URL myself. I just get that information from the backend. And then in my template, I can say like style this thing differently if it's active. Similar for is complete. Since I have every step defines a method called is complete, where you basically like, this is how Arcanist knows if it should consider this step to be complete. And usually, since this is the first step, I kind of say like as soon as the wizard exists, which means like as you can see here, it has an ID, right? As soon as the first step has been successfully submitted, then this step is like finished by default. What's more interesting are the subsequent steps. So select subscription, if I show you over here, is the second step in this. Oh no, I made a mistake somewhere. What did I do? Oh, this should be required. See, normal Laravel validation stuff, even the exceptions are the same. So this is the second step, right? Where you like select a subscription or whatever. Like this is a nonsensical example. It gets even worse the further we go. So the step can then say like, okay, I am considered complete once like this field, the selected subscription, which is a field, right? If that isn't null, so this data kind of is all the data that has been submitted in any of the steps of the wizard up until now, right? So Arcanist keeps track of all the data, and this maps to what you specify here, and this needs to be like the field name of your HTML like form input thing. So if you submit it, it'll take the key from here and like save it in this data array, and then you can access it anywhere saying this data. And this is kind of a call that I made where I said, I think in 99% of the cases, the way you determine if a step is finished or not is you check if the data you're supposed to provide in this step has been provided, right? If I have like 3 required fields and 1 is optional, is complete will probably check that these 3 required fields exist. Because the only way they exist is if you submit the form, and since you have validation rules, you know that if they exist, then they have to be valid. So you can't just say like, okay, as soon as this isn't null, basically, the step is complete. And then in the front end, you can do things like here, right, where I know pick username is apparently completed, so I can render it differently. Like that sort of thing, right? I just try to provide as much metadata as possible, so you can hopefully do whatever you need to do. So in this case, if I just select next, even though I haven't selected anything, right? There's a validation rule that I then display like this. There's even things. This is something I did yesterday, I believe, where you can say, I think I've actually implemented this, because a very common request was to have like, let's say like the subscriptions that you can select on this step depend on what you picked in the first step, right? I think this is a very common example. You pick something here like a city or a zip code, right? And then you can offer different features or whatever. That in and of itself isn't that difficult because you already have like this view data function, right? So you can just do like an if statement in here, like just like I did here, right? You can already return like different data depending on what has been selected before. So if I say my name is Kai, and I'm forced to pick the sucker plan, right? But if I'm totally not Kai, I can select a free plan. Now here's where it gets difficult. As soon as you do that, let's say I select a free plan, and now I go back and I change my name to Kai. what needs to happen is this step needs to be invalidated, right? Because the field that it depends on has changed. And that's what I did yesterday. Arcanist does that automatically. You just specify that the selected subscription field in the step depends on the username value. So as soon as username changes, the user has to reselect this thing. Okay, so if I now, this is nothing you have to implement. That happens automatically. If I now change my name back to Kai, so right now you can't see if it's not still selected, right? Because I just don't render it. But if I try to select, say next, you can see that like the free plan, in fact, isn't selected anymore, right? I unselected everything because the dependent field has changed. So that's something I think is really cool. So yeah, that is a, does it persist to cache or database or session? So there's also an interface for that. Let me just highlight this. So there is also a, I'm in the demo thing. Let's go to the vendor folder. What's my name again? Oh, here it is. So there is a interface for a repository. And by default, I will provide a database, like Eloquent-based repository. So that just creates like a, there's a migration that just creates a wizards table, right? But you could very easily just write like a Redis-based implementation. You may have seen me earlier that I have this fake wizard repository that I use in all my tests, right? That implements the same interface. It's just like an in-memory version of it that's easier to test. But you could just write like a Redis-based repository pretty easily, I think. This is actually something I've been thinking about, because if you do like a database-based repository, like this one is, then what happens if I now just close the browser? Like, you will forever have this stupid half-finished wizard in the database, right? So that's why I will also like provide a like a scheduled job that you can, that like cleans up stale wizards, right, after some threshold that you can configure, right? Like if there hasn't been like any changes to this wizard for, I don't know, 2 hours or a day, then just delete it. But that's really only a problem if you do a database-based implementation. If you do a cache-based implementation, you can just set like a time to live right inside the repository, right? You can just say like, I'll save this as this cache key, and it expires in an hour, right? And you just like touch it again if you save new data, so it refreshes automatically. And you kind of have this auto cleanup built in, which the more I think about it, the cooler I think this is. But yeah, so I try to like make everything as unopinionated as I can, so you can like just provide different implementations for these things. And then I provide like sensible defaults, right? I think like a database-based implementation is going to work for most people, similar to like Blade and Inertia. I think that will cover most bases. Livewire, I think, will just work if you use the Blade renderer. I'm not quite sure, to be honest, because I don't really use Livewire. But Inertia definitely works. So yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you like it. Wizards are so annoying to build. And now that I'm writing this package, I realize how annoying they actually are there, because there are so many stupid edge cases. Because, just to give you an example, there's an ID here that probably shouldn't be accessible to everyone, right? Like, what if I just do this? Like, do I see someone else's subscription form now? there could be like sensitive data on here. So now you need to worry about, okay, if I persisted, I also have to think about like authorization. But the problem is, and this is always the thing with writing a package, you can't just solve, like you have to solve the general problem. I can't just say like a wizard is always tied to a user because there might not be a user, right? This is a registration form. I don't have a user. So I can't just say, well, there's always a user ID. And it might be different like for different wizards in the same application, right? The registration wizard might have different rules for who can edit this than another wizard, right? Or your application maybe has something where everything from the same team can edit a wizard that is in progress, right? So I can't like make any assumptions about what the authorization actually needs to look like. I just have to provide you with enough ways so you can implement whatever you need. That's always the tricky part. So it's like taking a step back and what's the general problem that I need to solve, and not how can I prevent some other user from accessing this, but how can I provide the user of the package with ways to like provide their own authorization logic. Yeah. So that's what this is about. I'm not even sure if the person who initially asked about this package is still here. Okay, so this was a quick detour. So I've been streaming for 1.5 hours. I think I'm going to do 30 more minutes or so, and then I'm going to stop. And so what this stream is about is like just internal refactoring, because there are things that I'm not quite happy with the more features I add. And it basically all boils down to the wizard class is doing too much. It makes it difficult for me to test anything in isolation. And so my tests get pretty complicated and difficult to understand and hard to set up. And that's usually a sign that the thing you're testing is doing too many things. Which is why I'm trying to move out some of the dependencies of the wizard class into like some other layer that currently doesn't exist, which is proving to be pretty challenging. So where was I? Right, I wanted to ensure that if no wizard exists, that a 404 gets rendered, right? So I think that's easy. It's the same test, but we just don't register the wizard, right? We try to access the same URL, and then this should be assert not found. I think. 500, okay. It's something. Didn't expect a 500. Oh. Wait. Why is there a 500? Oh, because it's actually trying to render the view. Right, so I think I just need to make sure that in all of these tests, I'm always using the fake renderer. So let's do and then ensure that this is what gets resolved. Oh. So that should get rid of the 404, which means I can get rid of this. Oh, it's response renderer. Right. Oh. This is something that happens to me so often. When I overwrite the Laravel test case and I overwrite the setup method, I forget to call the parent constructor, which means the entire framework doesn't get booted, or the parent setup method. And then you get like these really weird error messages where binding resolution something doesn't exist because, well, I haven't actually set up the application yet. Yeah, the thing with persisting state is there's like no general solution to that, because I don't know how long you want to persist it. Right, as soon as you persist it, you have the whole problem with, now I need to make sure that only the person who started the wizard can access it. It's like when you like follow the thread, things get really complicated in ways that aren't immediately obvious. So the whole package is a really good example of the last 20% taking 80% of the time. Like, it had the basic functionality written in a day. But then it's like all these weird details that take forever. But it's kind of, that is the whole selling point of this package, right? Is like, I have solved these problems once, so you don't have to. So yeah. Anyways, what's the... Okay, yeah, 200, because we don't actually try and check if this is actually the correct... If a wizard exists for the slug. Which means we first of all need to make sure that the wizard slug is part of the URL, which it currently isn't. Right, this is this is the URL. So we'll say, what's the syntax again? I think this, slug. And now both tests broke. Interesting, because, oh yeah, because I actually have to provide the slug. Wait, what? No, that was not the thing I was supposed to do. This thing is supposed to be parameterized. Wait, what's going on? Ah, shit, it doesn't work. That doesn't work. I can parameterize this one. It just has to be like a generic wizard create, and then I have to, when I generate the URL, I have to actually pass it in. Right. So wizard slug, like this. And the same thing down here. Okay, now the first one should be back to normal, second one should return a 200, yeah. Which is because this will always find a valid wizard. So what we need to do is, just to get the test to run, oh no, I can't actually, I can't even fake my way through this. I have to actually, so for now, I'm just gonna do this, which I'm definitely gonna change. Arcanist wizards. And then I have to like, I have to do this. Basically collect And then first. These are just strings, right? Yeah. Then it's slug is equal to this. No. To wizard slug. Right, and then if this is null, we will throw a... Is there a way to like 404 not found? No content. Wait, is there no... I know I can do abort, but isn't there like a return a 404? I mean, I can't just do pass in 404. So but I want to have the like the normal Laravel 404 page, not a wizard specific one. So let's just do this for now. HTTP not found exception. It's just not found exception. Yeah, and I think Laravel does, turns that into like a 404 response internally. So, if I'm not mistaken, this should work. Oh no, it doesn't because there's an S missing here. Come on, come on. Stop it. No, okay. What did I mess up? Oh, yeah. Now I actually have to... I can't do without exception handling anymore because I actually expect this exception. Okay, so the second one stopped working, which is interesting. Wizard slug, wizard slug. Huh. Why is that? Oh. No, Arcanist wizards? Wait, what am I actually dealing with here? Why is this empty? Why is this an array? What am I doing? There we go. Now it should pass. Okay. Wizard slug. Oh, because it doesn't match the raw parameter name. Right? I think that's it. No? Okay. What am I doing wrong? First of all, what is this? Okay, so that's correct. What's in here? Right. And wait. Okay, so it's not actually... It just said it didn't return the right step. Do I actually have a wizard down here? No, I don't even get to this point. Interesting. So that means this comparison here never returns true. Wait, no, Oh yeah, okay. This is a string, this isn't an instance. I need to actually create an instance. Right. So I hate having to do app. But I need the instance. Okay, so I kind of want to get rid of the config in here. I'd prefer it if this would be passed as a constructor parameter. Makes it easier to me to set up in a test, and I don't have to like reach out to the config. So let's do private array registered wizards, something like this. And just so my tests don't all start breaking, this is just going to be an empty array for now. That should still work. Right, and then I can change my test to, instead of setting the config to this value, we just, oh, crap. No, I still need to do this. Because I'm not actually manually creating the instance of the controller here. But I still want it to be passed in. So since my tests are still passing, what I can do is when wizard controller, contextual bindings are really cool. If this needs registered wizards give, I know there is like a give config, but that's like a very recent addition. Like that is some minor release of Laravel 8 point something. And if I do like install prefer lowest, my test will actually crash because it installs some version of Laravel that doesn't have give config yet. And I don't want to pin it to such a high specific version, so I'll just do this. Right, so let's do wizards. And that should still work because nothing really should have changed, except that my controller should now actually have wizards. So I should be able to just do this registered wizards. No, I can't. Why is that? Empty. Okay, why is it empty? Oh, wrong class. Wizard controller is what I wanted. Still empty. Interesting. Registered wizards. Registered wizards. Registered wizards. Config Arcanist wizards. What am I missing? What am I missing? Config Arcanist wizards. Wizard controller. Needs registered wizards. Okay. There's no typo in here. But why is this empty? Is this like a... It gets resolved before this actually happens. Like, I'm pretty sure that if I do, like, I do the annoying way, the manual way, right? And there's like, what's it called? Application, I think. And then we'll do like return new wizard controller with app make. Response renderer. And then I'll do like app config Arcanist wizards. I think that will work. Doesn't. Okay, I'm confused. Do I actually go into this one? I do. Okay, so this is a case of the binding gets resolved before I do this. Well, that sucks. Wait, but this is weird. I don't believe this. I don't believe this. Let's undo. What's your problem? This app, when? Oh, because yeah. This is being evaluated right away. Does that work? I'm really curious if that works. No. Out of curiosity, how long have you been working with the framework, and how did you first learn about it? So I see that I currently have 0 viewers, but maybe you'll watch the replay, the VOD. Wow, how long have I been working with Laravel? 5 years, 6 years, I would say. And I honestly don't know how I first heard about it. Because I wasn't even working with PHP at the time. But I know that I learned the framework, not about it, but like learning the framework itself. That is like all credits to Laracast, basically. For the first, I don't know, 2 years or 3 years, it was all Laracast. And then after that, I branched out, I guess. But yeah, so 5 or 6 years, I think, at this point. This is annoying me. Because this is only a problem in a test. The issue is that this is just an expression, right? This is not lazily evaluated. This is like evaluated once the service provider gets called. At which point, this hasn't yet run. So I don't actually get, this change doesn't really propagate. Which is annoying. Isn't there like a way? You can do closure. I would assume that. Okay, now this is how I learn about the framework. I'm annoyed that that it doesn't work how I expect it to work. So now I will look into the implementation to see how it actually works. I think this is like an implicit binding or something like that. explicit, no, contextual binding, I think it is. Contextual binding builder? No, what does this return? Void, okay. Contextual binding builder. This is an interface, okay. There's an interface and an implementation with the same name. That's interesting. So if I say give, it adds a contextual binding to the container. So I guess the question is now, if the container tries to resolve a dependency and it sees it's a contextual binding, what does it do? So let's look at the container then. So if I do like make or build or whatever, build, at some point it'll try to resolve the dependencies. Get parameters, there we go. And in here, yeah, there's going to be a loop, and then has parameter override. No, there is a, I'm pretty sure there's like a contextual binding thing. Resolve class, is that it? Resolve, it's not variadic. I'm sure there is like a contextual thing. Get contextual concrete. This is a rabbit hole. Find the contextual bindings. I just want to know what it does if the contextual binding is a closure. Under an alias, no, don't care. Find, but the return type says it doesn't really care. I'm just curious why it's type hinted that way. Okay, now this just retrieves it. Huh. Get contextual concrete. Right, but if this is a closure, it'll just return the closure, right? It's not going to call the closure. It's unfortunate. I'm sure there is a way, but this is like such a, this is not really a problem. This is just like how I do my tests. But this is annoying because I want it to be a constructor parameter instead of having to reach out to the config. But I actually want to control what gets passed into the constructor. The thing that's confusing to me is when I did, whoops, even when I did the explicit bind with a closure, that's the part that's kind of confusing to me. It still didn't work. So if I do wizard controller, and then like app, right, and then, oh, is this a case of, wait, let me just do this, for example. Right, and then we'll resolve the whatchamacallit, response renderer. And I'll just do this. What is this app config Arcanist? Because I would assume that because this is a closure, this only gets evaluated once you're actually trying to resolve the controller, which in my case is down here. So that should happen after I set the thing in the config. But it doesn't seem to work that way. So wizards is empty. Oh, I'm an idiot. Oh my god. I am an idiot. I am an idiot. The problem is that I forgot to do this. It's supposed to be an array. And it still doesn't fucking work. Wait, but now, like, everything is actually working, right? So, what the hell is going on? Oh, dear Lord, I need to stop. This is... I am making so many stupid mistakes. Yeah. Oh man, that was not as hard as I made it out to be. What's weird to me is how this didn't throw an exception, because it should have been a type mismatch. Like I'm typing an array and I was given a string that should have just I don't know, man. I forgot what I wanted to do. So this works, right? We're actually resolving the correct thing now. This is still bothering me because I don't like doing like service location. Okay. This feels like needs to happen in every step in this controller. Like to the point where I'm not entirely sure if this should even happen in here. An alternative could be to no, that will make testing even worse. I'm not sure if this is worth like moving in a different class. This might just be a private method. But this I'm going to have to do for every step, right? So I'm curious, like this seems like it might actually, that this could actually work. I mean, if I actually plug this in, this looks like it might work. Just for the create route, of course. That is assuming in the abstract wizard, I actually need to make the build view data thing public, right? No, I want to move this up to its public brothers and sisters. I want to test this with my demo application. Because if this actually works for the first step, then I'm happy for today. And I will stop streaming. And if it doesn't work, I will also stop streaming because I'm going to be sad. And then there also needs to be like a first step thing that I kind of made up, right? So there's a first step. This is kind of weird to me. This feels like a method that shouldn't exist. Because all it's going to do is this. What's your problem? This. This feels like a weirdly specific method to exist on the wizard. I don't know. But that's because the whole like step resolution thing still happens inside the wizard, and I'm not entirely sure that that's where it should be. Okay, so let's actually run everything again. and then switch over to the demo app and try to see if we can open the first step of this like sign up wizard, because this looks like it might work. And if it doesn't work, it means there are some tests missing. Oh no, oh no. Oh no, what is going on? It's because I think wait, what? Undefined property data. Wizard test. Line. Abstract wizard 221. Why is data? Oh, okay. Because I accidentally deleted it when I made this a promoted constructor property, and then I forgot to add it again. So I'm fairly confident this will work. Famous last words. So let's see. If I did this correctly, I should be able to do this. Which, 1 second. Well, shit. Yeah. I think, yeah, it'll just get overwritten. So let's just for fun, let's just not register the create route. Right, so it's wizard create. And then we have just a slug. I'm really curious if this is gonna work. No. Oh, I know why that is. That is the unrelated problem. It's because I am not in the web middleware, so the errors don't get flashed this session, which is why I'm getting this. I know this because I have debugged this exact same problem for an hour a while ago. In fact, down here, I had the exact same problem here because I forgot to add the web middleware. But I tried to access like the add error blade directive, which needs the flashes error to session middleware. So yeah, this should go into middleware anyways, but for now, let's just do middleware. And this needs to be configurable. Like fucking everything needs to be configurable. All right, come on. Yeah, cool. Okay, just so I'm not celebrating too early, I actually do go in here, right? I'm not having some weird caching thing. Cool. Nice. Okay. So that was a success. Now I need to do this for all the other methods as well. And then what? Right, then I can remove the response renderer from the wizard. Okay, cool. So this is... Yeah, I think this is it for today. At least I now have a state that from the outside still works the same way it did 2 hours ago. So that's great. I'm now at a point where nothing changed, but I still spent 2 hours. All right, so let me think about what the next few steps would be. First step of wizard, not found response. The thing is, I kind of want to move the whole loading the wizard's data thing. I want to move this up to the controller. So this is going to be a fairly large test case. And I still don't like that I have to do this. Can I actually, let me think about this. Can I get rid of this stupid class? Because I feel like I'm just gonna have the same problem in here that I now have in the wizard test class. Like if I need to change the behavior of the wizard, like maybe what happens if it returns an error, then I have to like implement all these different kinds of wizards that actually do produce that error, which is what I wanted to get away from. I wanted to be able to just mock it. So I guess to do that, I hate long lines. What if I does this work? I would still have to configure the mock quite a bit, which I don't like, and the fact that I need the test step, which means the mock will have to return a mock. Oh no, the test doesn't, the step doesn't matter. That can just be a regular class. So if I say this is some abstract wizard, and it allows what's the first one? First step, right? And returns shit. I can't do this because it needs a wizard in its constructor. Fuck, I've made some really stupid design decisions that are now coming back to haunt me. This is annoying because the only reason I even need this step is because I need it in the assertion. I don't actually need the instance. But the response renderer expects an instance. I feel like I was at this point before. Can I actually, what happens if I do this? Because now I have access to the wizard variable, right? So what if I do like allows first step and returns new test step and pass in that? This is almost worse than what I had before. Can I chain another allows? No. So I'd have to do this. Build view data. Allows build view data. And returns. So what if I now register this? Like this test did not get easier to read. Watch controller. No, it doesn't. Oh, why did both? The fuck? No application key? Wait, what? Are you shitting me? How? What? What did I do? How could I possibly get that error? What is going on? so wait, what if I undo this? There's no way that this could have caused that error. Controller test wizard. Not new class. No, okay, that didn't cause it. What the hell did I do? What the fuck? Okay, all these tests are failing. So what on earth did I do? It looks like the framework isn't booting anymore. Application key. What on earth? This is probably going to be something completely unrelated to the application key. Do I have like a dump in the container somewhere when I was like debugging? Okay, this is bizarre. An application key has been specified. Huh. Is it the weird middleware thing? That can't be it, right? That's it? Are you shitting me? What? How are those two things related? I don't understand how this causes that problem. Because the same thing is literally happening down here. Does like route middleware somehow behave different than... Okay, now I'm curious. Now I wanna know. Is this somehow different? The chaining middleware to the end of it? It isn't. What in the world? I feel like this is a red herring. This is not the problem. The problem is something completely unrelated, and that's just the first exception it hits. Makes HTTP requests. Okay, I'm really curious. I wanna know why this is so strange. Because it's actually causing my tests to fail, so... How can this possibly lead to this error? But if I leave it off, I think the whole reason this would have the same problem, I'm pretty sure, but I never actually have a test that does like an HTTP request. I think what's going on is that in my test setup, I'm either not booting everything that I need. Like now this needs some other setup that I haven't needed before because it never actually did an HTTP request. Get package providers. Create application. HTTP kernel. Oh, here we go again. Well, what the hell is with all these weird classes that are empty? No. Huh. What a bizarre error. Okay, yeah, but this has to do with the fact that something isn't booted, some service provider isn't booted that I need in order for like middleware to work. This action middleware. Funkit args. What? Oh. Okay, I think I have to look in the box of Orchestra test bench. I have probably messed up my setup somehow. Let me move this over here. Wow, that is not how I expected this to work. I just want to merge tabs, man. Come on. I like how that PHP Storm thing is still there, and I can't get it to close. No, I wanted the docs. Routes? Oh, that must be it. Wait, no. Ah. Yeah, okay. I think it expects me to, in my service provider, have like a load routes from, and that's how it knows how to configure them, I think. And by doing it like in this ghetto way, I'm kind of messing with it. No, we're not going to do annotations. But I also don't want to hardcode like a test route because this is the actual route. So, I mean, fair enough. The whole reason I have this class is because I needed to like register dynamic routes. But now that I have this like catch-all controller, I could actually do a like a web.php. So let's just see if this would fix it, and then I'm done. I think this is it. So if I do this, right, and then I basically do it the same way that Laravel does it, to like configure dynamic middleware, I would like do route group blah 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 and then include the web file instead of doing it in here. So like this, and then I think there's like this load routes from, yeah, but I think that has to go in boot. I can never remember where, in what method these things need to go. Load routes from, yeah, I want to load it from routes web. Okay, let's see if that fixes it. It does not, are you shitting me? It's so weird that it happens as soon as I attach the middleware. Let me just, because I don't know any better. I'm sure this is thrilling to watch. What am I filtering on controller? But I want to know why this doesn't work. This won't let me sleep at night if I don't find out why this doesn't work. Okay, so that wasn't the problem. So what is the problem? Oh, okay. Yes, I know. I understand it now. It's not that this thing tipped me off when it said in order to use encryption. Because part of the web middleware group is like encrypt and decrypt cookies and shit like that. So it's not that the middleware isn't loaded, but the middleware actually needs an app key. So the error was actually the correct error. God fucking damn it. Okay. I'm alright. I am zen. So let's, I still think route file would be a better idea in the end, but let's just roll this back, get rid of this, and then in my PHP unit XML, I'll just copy and paste what they tell us to. Yeah, that looks like a nice app key. Thanks, man. I appreciate the support. I also can now claim that I have a #1 fan, which is pretty cool. So where does this even go? Is this like a top level thing? PHP? I think I could also just do it in the test case. Okay. Dear Lord. Wow. Okay. I think I wanted to stop like 5 times, and every time something stupid would happen. Yeah, I think I could have just done it here and said like config set app key. And then I could get rid of this because no one ever looks here. And I think that would also work. Maybe I just provided like a stupid encryption key that doesn't work. Yeah. So let me just create a real one, key generate, and then copy that. So shut shit. No, that was not wanted to copy. There was a... Isn't there like a dump it to the console thing? Show, yeah, that's what I want. And then I want to copy that. There we go. But I don't think it's supposed to be... Is it supposed to be base 64 in here? Yeah. Okay, dear Lord. What a fun half hour. Cool, so I think I am actually done with this for now. So I believe we could just delete this route. Because it is fully replaced here. The create route doesn't actually do anything other than render the step. Hold on a second. Wait. I hate this. Why? We tested this, right? Like, that still worked. But how does it work? Because I haven't actually implemented the... Oh! Yeah, I need to stop. Okay, I need to stop. I'm an idiot. Forget what I just said. This should have worked. It worked because it should have worked. Everything's okay. Cool. So yeah, this was really confused last 30 minutes or so, but I'm glad that I at least got that part to work, because I think it's a good starting point. This is going to be a really complicated refactor, because it changes like basically everything about the wizard. Because it stops the wizard from being a controller, which it currently is. It does all the like redirection and stuff, and by moving that out, like a lot of the behavior of this wizard changes, which means all of my tests that I've written for this class are going to be horribly broken. But I think a lot of those tests will just move over to the controller test now, which I think is a good sign, because it means I have been mixing a lot of different responsibilities. And now having a dedicated spot to do that, I think is a good idea. Oh shit, I just remembered. I remembered what I wanted to do before I got lost in this horrible encryption key not said thing. I wanted to test this mock stuff, but I guess that works, right? So I can actually get rid of this. I'm not terribly happy that I have to do all this crap, but this is nice. Oh no. No, I want to do... Wait. Why on earth does this still work? This should fail, right? Yeah, okay. But what if I do this now? That's what I wanted to test. Because I'm not sure get class of a mock. Well, it'll give me something back. But the mock also doesn't have a slug, I just realized. So, I mean, I can do this, but now it's like, this is... So that doesn't work. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It can't work because we're doing... this. One more reason why I hate doing that. Okay, so I'm just gonna undo that, and I think I just have to sleep on it or something. I'm sure I'll, like, at 11 at night, I'll just go, I got it. Because that's always how it goes for me. So let me just undo all this crap. Check that things are back to normal. Check that everything works. And then I am really done. This stream is like never gonna end. Man, these tests normally take like a half a second. It redirects to the first wizard. Oh, okay. Oh, but that's actually a good thing. I can change. Because that's an actual behavior that needs to be changed anyways. So I can do, like, in my abstract wizard, in the wizard test, there's it redirects to the first step, right? To the, wait. Oh no, it's the blade response renderer test. That was, okay, that's an unexpected. Oh, that's part of the contract test, right? Yeah. To the first step. So this no longer works because that doesn't have a slug. PHP unit filter. Just because it takes forever. Okay, so thank God I have tests, man. Ah, this is interesting. Okay, yeah, that's the case where the wizard doesn't exist. It's supposed to redirect you to the first step. And now all I have to do is this. Man, these tests are so useful. Like, there's no way I would have remembered this. But, okay, this route doesn't exist. That's weird. But it does exist, right? No. I know what's going on. I think I'm just calling this manually, yeah. Which means, wait, if I do boot, it should actually do this. Wizard.create. But it's, oh, the parameter is missing, okay. Pro tip, read the whole error message. It works every time. So what I need to do is, yeah, instead of parameterizing it that way, the wizard slug just becomes a parameter now to the route call. I'm not sure if since it's the only route parameter, can I just do this? Or do I have to explicitly say this is a slug parameter? Yep, looks like that's what I have to do. So slug. Wait, no, it's not called slug, is it? It's called, no, it's called slug, okay. Missing required parameter. Missing parameter slug. In contract test 47. Helpers. Contract test 47. Oh, dude. swear to God. So this should be that, right? All right. Cool. So please, everything, work. I want to eat, but I can't if my tests aren't passing. Looking good. Cool, I can finally stop. All right. So I think that's it for today. I don't know when I'll be streaming next. Not this weekend. But I'll be sure to post it on Twitter. And I'll also be giving a talk at the next Laravel Worldwide Meetup on Tuesday, I believe. So if you want to learn more about database indexing, be sure to drop by. Anyways, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.